Mitchell Jr., Chief Cook County Public Defender, part of the coalition that helped support the bill to remove money from the bail process. Thanks also to Chicago Alderperson Virenciccio Lopez, Alderperson of the 25th Ward in Chicago and chair of the Housing and Real Estate Committee of the Chicago City Council. We will continue to follow these stories and what happens on Labor Day. This is Democracy Now!, produced with Mike Burke, Renee Feltz, Dina Guzder, Messiah Rhodes, Nermeen Sheikh, Maria Terracena, Nicole Salazar, Sarah Nasser, Tarina Nadura, Sam Alcock, Tamaru Astudio, John Hamilton, Ravi Karen, Hani Massoud, and Safwat Nazal. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
Hi, this is Al McFarlane, host of The Conversation with Al McFarlane. You're listening to 90.3 FM, KFAI, Minneapolis. I'm Al McFarland. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarland. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. As always, we promise robust conversation. I believe we'll deliver on that promise today as well. Got some great guests, friends of mine in community talking about important topics. You're going to be listening to my friend Marquita Stephens. She's the CEO and president of the Urban League of Twin Cities. Important events coming up, but an important legacy institution, both here in Minnesota and around the country as well. We'll talk about what's on her plate and what's on the agenda for our community, the work of the Urban League and the Urban League of Twin Cities in particular. Also joining me today, my friend Justin Butler and a new friend, TiAnna Anderson, and they're here connected to work that we're all associated with the Greater Twin Cities United Way. And the work is generally philanthropy, but we're particularly interested in talking about Black philanthropy, how that shows up, what it means, what's the distinction, and what's the wonderful legacy of giving in the Black community that we sometimes don't recognize, don't acknowledge, but nonetheless, we do the work. Our community does the work, and we simply want to elevate that work and the understanding that we bring to the power of philanthropy in community. I want to thank KFAI, as always, for providing this space for The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Always kudos to Amy Goodman and Democracy Now! What a powerful program. What a great voice for change and for consciousness in our country. Some things that I am thinking about, but I'm not going to talk about today, but they're on my mind, and maybe they're on your mind as well, that we should talk about in the future, include what happened with the Texas Democrats who left the state of Texas, who holed up for a week or so in Illinois in protest to the governor's intent to do redistricting in Texas that would result in a midterm redistricting vote that would result in 5 seats that are presently held by Democrats switching to Republicans, and therefore giving and sort of buttressing the Republican majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. Other states have been looking at it. What the Texas Democrats did at cost of fines and penalty and more is they called the nation's attention to what some of us see as a wicked intent to rob the voting power of emerging communities, Black and brown communities in particular in Texas, but that the Texas exercise as a blueprint of how the present administration intends to roll back the freedoms that we hold dear. And the warning is that we all have to pay attention and see what we can do to make sure that our voices count, our votes count, that we show up at the polls, we organize our families, our households, our neighborhoods so that we are active voting in the community, and that we support progressive democracy, pro-democracy movements around the country. What I fear, listeners, is that there's a conscientious effort to roll back freedom. When they say make America great again, they're talking about creating an America that disadvantaged and permanently disenfranchised people of color in general, Black people in particular. And I have to say that it's up to us to say, we're not going back. We're not going back. We will fight, and we will continue to make this democracy move it towards the perfection that is possible. That perfection depends on our ability and our willingness to stand up for our rights and for the rights of others as well. Well, along that line, I've been watching the drama in city of Minneapolis politics. The Minneapolis DFL convention had selected one candidate and then deselected the candidate because there was discontent over the process that resulted in the endorsement of one candidate and the failure of the district or the convention to count a number of votes of delegates who were present at the DFL convention. So in weeks ahead, I want to focus on that. If you've got a point of view of issue that you want to bring up about the DFL convention and about the race for mayor of Minneapolis, we want to get involved in that over the next several weeks. We also are watching closely several ward races, in particular Fifth Ward. We hope to bring the candidates of Fifth Ward and others to your attention on this program as well. Well, let me begin by focusing on my guest that I have today. I want to begin by inviting Marquita Stephens. And Marquita, good afternoon. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. And take a minute, if you would, just to give people Twin Cities Urban League of Twin Cities 101. Introduce people who don't know to the organization, its legacy, its work, its vision, and its mission.
Thank you. This is wonderful. I'm so glad to be here with you and your other guests today. It's timely, obviously, because we are getting ready to celebrate our 100th year as the Twin Cities Urban League. And so, yay for all of the people that have come before us, including you. And so we will be able to honor the past presidents that are still around in the vicinity, as well as past executive directors and board chairs, etc. So it'll be a fun event, September 5th, Friday, September 5th, 6 o'clock at the depot. And so please put that on your calendar, come out. You can check our social media pages for access to how you would pay to either sponsor or buy a ticket for the event. So that's that. I wanted to make sure I got that out there before we got into the meat of the conversation about who we are and what we do. Mm-hmm. The Urban League for years has been doing great work in the area of employment, in housing, in education, and more recently in youth development in a new and different way. We've done housing with respect to first-time home buyers, and we're really working hard to keep that program going. As many of you know, there have been federal cutbacks, and that has affected our housing departments most. And so we're really looking for avenues, banks in particular, to help shore up that part of our programming, because they will benefit the most by being able to provide loans to people who are looking for their first home. So we're doing credit recovery, et cetera, all of that, savings programs, everything that goes along with being in position to be a successful home owner, and walking through what to some is a very scary process, particularly for the first time. Then we have the employment program, which is probably the program most known nationally, is employment. When you move from city to city, one of the things people do often in the community is to look at the Urban League to see what jobs are available. And we're still doing that work and doing it quite well. We are focusing on some industry lanes specifically. So we've got a good, robust program in IT, and we're in burgeoning AI work, training people there, not only in terms of entry level and digital literacy and those kinds of things, but offering step up, what I would call step up certification. So for people who are already engaged in IT work, they can get certified to do work at the next level. So we're working on that as well. Joy Jones runs that department. And of course, everybody knows Miss Norma. And we do work with the trades to get people interested in the trades and get them into apprenticeships and training and the like. Most recently, and this is very recent, so I'm glad to put this out there on your show as well. And that is, we're one of the organizations selected for the Can Train grant to teach people how to work in the cannabis industry. So for those who are looking to get into that industry, and we consider it kind of a reparations thing, but those that are looking to get into that, they can certainly call Joy as well and find out how that is going to be rolled out. Then we have the Black Gems. That's our high school program for 9th through 12th graders. We meet weekly for the school year, and it's really geared towards social emotional learning. It is designed to build self-awareness and self-confidence so that when you go into whatever your post-secondary work is, whether it's straight to work, whether it's to trades, or whether it's to college, you take yourself, your best self, into those worlds. And so we've designed it to recruit people throughout the metro. So it's not school-based, because we want people to understand when they go into those jobs, when they go into college, they're going by themselves. They're not going with their crew. And they need to have some practice to understand how to get energized and how to get how to be successful in those environments in which they show up as a stranger. So that's kind of the Black Gems. That's kind of our work overall. Then, of course, we're known for advocacy. One of the things we're very involved in is the policing and the consent decree. And your listeners might be interested in knowing that the National Urban League is working with us with respect to monitoring the activity here locally around the progress on the consent decree. So even as I go to the meetings of ALIFA and the implementation unit, et cetera, and talk about what we want to see by way of protecting our citizenry, know that the Urban League nationally is in that room as well.
That's a lot to unpack. Great. Thank you so much, Marquita. Let me go back to several of the things you talked about. One of the things that I know the Urban League has always done is support young people getting into knowledge about college trips, college fairs. Are you still doing that? College tours?
Yes, we do the HBCU tour as part of the Black Gem experience. But the unique thing, or what I consider unique about it, is we do a pretty deep dive in the civil rights sites that birth the cultures in those areas, because we're very sensitive to the fact that kids raised in this environment in Minnesota is very different than the environment that they might find in a place like Alabama or DC or Arkansas. And so we try to make sure they understand what grounds that area, because in most schools, with the exception of the Ivies, most of the kids going to those schools, 50% of them are from that state. And so you really have to understand the culture that that state has generated in order to adjust well. And so I'm proud to say that 100% of the kids that left our program and went to HBCUs stuck and graduated from those HBCUs, unlike others who might talk about having gone there for a year and turned around and come back because they didn't adjust. Our kids are prepared and that's what social emotional development does.
What is your sense, Marquita, of the general attitude about education for Black youth? So I raised the question because we hear two things at the same time. One, too often we're in community circles where we bemoan the children as a lost generation. We are disappointed or disgusted or fearful sometimes of young people, walking sagging with their pants, and we are concerned about disrespect that young people show to each other and to community and to the elders. That's one set of ideas that all of us are, maybe thinking about. But at the same time, we know that there are just so many gifted, bright, brilliant, and properly focused young people. And it seems to me that part of the challenge is that the systems encourage us to focus too much. I'm not saying it exactly the right way, but to not look at all the pluses and all the possibilities and all the achieving that's going on, and to not call that normal, but rather to look at things that are problematic as normal. Does that make sense in terms of a general question? How does that sound to you?
No, I get where you're going. And that's one of our observations. And we center it around the experience with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
COVID students were forced to completely immerse themselves in technology. So with all their information and interaction coming from a computer or phone screen, it diminished their interest in academic pursuits. And so, it's a normal kind of a progression. And so we have to work to address that issue. And it means that we have to present things in a different way, because frequent use of technology among students, it has been associated with reduced motivation or feelings of disconnection from their surroundings and themselves, and thoughts shaped by social media. Well, when you're getting your information and your stimulation in ways like that, it does put you in a place where you have to work as a program lead twice as hard and work differently to make sure that kids are prepared appropriately for the things that I just described. And so we focus on internal exploration, interpersonal collaboration, and external exposure. And those factors have to be present in order to turn kids around. So we've seen great success with that. And it's not that they don't want to, it's that they have to be guided toward that. And they have to feel like who they are is okay.
That segues into your comment about teaching and training and exposure you're providing in the IT and in the AI areas. And that leads into your discussion, you're concerned about employment as well. What do you see as what's your prognosis for the future of our community as it relates to movement in the IT and AI arena? Are you hopeful? Are you fearful that we're going to be left behind? Let me tell you where I find myself. When I look at what's happening in the arena of what they call Afrofuturism or Black futurism, I am absolutely blown away by the display of genius and capability that our young people are demonstrating. And I say that genius always existed, but we simply have been kept unaware of our own power, our own gifts, our own contributions, and that what we're discovering now is a way to break out of the narrow information streams that curated what success looked like and curated us out of the picture. Social media and technology today allow us to connect with each other locally and globally at will. And that is a game changer. How does it look to you? And how does that impact your vision, your decision to keep promoting opportunity in technology and IT and AI training, but also how that leads to a future where we find gainful employment and entrepreneurism, where we not only take good jobs, but we create good jobs? What do you think?
I think both and. I think they're not only our agency, but there are others that are engaged in that work, such that the populace that we serve, the disenfranchised, if you will, have an opportunity to get prepared in a way that allows them to participate in society as a complete entity. And so one of the things I like to talk about in terms of the Urban League's distinction is it's not so much what we do, but it's who we are.
Mm.
And because of who we are, people can come to us with the ability to admit what they don't know, with the ability to be open and frank and be embraced in a non-judgmental way. And it's that is going to allow us to turn the corner, be prepared, and to lead in some of these ways. We allow kids and adults to find their genius, and it's there. And we just have to be in a situation where we allow it to come forward. Now we're old school. So,
Well,
get it twisted, as the kids might say.
let me go to old school right there. So, like you said, you got a cannabis training grant. What does that mean? And number one, let me applaud you for stepping up, because I think that too often we have been hiding from the truth of our experiences in the social spaces. That could be alcohol, it could be cannabis and other substances that are present in our community, and somehow we're told to act like they don't exist. But at the same time, we end up being part of a cash cow for somebody else. And so it seems to me that you use the word reparations as a strategy to deal with, number one, the reality of cannabis use in our community, the legality of it now, and that against a backdrop of over-policing and incarceration of our people, I'll say is legal. And it's not like somebody's doing us a favor. We look at the record, we know that the society in general, for example, had double standards. I think Judge Pam Alexander led the movement here in Minnesota years ago to force our courts to look at the disparate sentencing for white people that used powdered cocaine as a social and recreational activity, but condemned with massive prison sentences Black people who were using a cheaper version. They called it crack cocaine, cocaine nonetheless. So the system favored white people socializing however they chose to and normalizing that, while it penalized us for our iteration of the same experience. The cannabis legislation addresses that, I believe, in part. I'm glad that the Urban League is doing the training. Tell me about what that means and about the social and cultural environment that brings us to this point.
Thank you. I remember the judge well. And I thought about it this way. When I first came to the Urban League in 2017, I said to the then president, Stephen Belton, one of the things that I wanted to see happen is for the Urban League to be in position to address this issue around so many of our Black citizenry being incarcerated because of selling marijuana. And I knew that the day was going to come where it would be legalized. And when it did, I wanted us to be in position to be able to help those that had been incarcerated for selling the drug to work in the industry and perhaps own the stores. And so this opportunity with the state providing funding for the Can Train, and then there's a Can Grow. We didn't apply for the Can Grow, but we did apply for the Can Train with an eye toward that. That's why I call it reparations. It's my point of view rather than any kind of legal option. In any event, we're very excited about it. It just came out. It's brand new, so we don't have the details yet. We do know we're going to work with one of the local colleges, a junior college, to do to use their lab for some of that part of the training. So it'll be a complete and comprehensive process to be able to put folks in those jobs, and then we'll look at trying to support ways to enable them to then become owners of stores, when that opens up a little bit more. But that's the attitude. It's being there, representing the community, just making sure that we're 2 steps ahead. We've been engaged with the department at the state for a while. So when it came out, when the RFP came out, they contacted me to say, listen, it's out. You want to apply, these are the terms, etc. Because we have been engaged. These are things we don't talk about. People don't necessarily know about the league, but understand that we are there. We are acting on behalf of the community in ways that you can see and that you can't see. I'm just one more thing, and then I'll let you move on. But I'm a Star Wars baby, if you might say. You either were Star Wars or Star Trek, and I'm Star Wars. And I remember Yoda saying to Luke that he was exasperated because he was trying to train Luke, and Luke wasn't paying attention. And he said, always toward the future, always elsewhere, never where you are now, never what you're doing. And I'm saying we got to pay attention. We got to we're in a 5-year plan. We're going to plan out, but we got to pay attention to where we are and where the community that we serve is and what they're suffering from and what they're excited about.
I want to acknowledge and thank a viewer, listener. He's on YouTube or one of the social media platforms. The name is Big Cheese. Big Cheese, thank you for listening and your comments. Let me post or show the comment. The first comment was that he says the only thing that will close the wealth gap between Black and white Americans is cash reparations, tangibles, and a Black anti-hate crime bill specifically for FBA foundational Black Americans. And he also goes on to say, he or she, I'm not sure if it's he or she, but Big Piece goes on to say that the NAACP and the Urban League, Boule and the Democratic Party have prioritized open borders and allow folks that don't belong in the U.S. Over the Black community. So there's a lot of discussion about that. Big Cheese, thank you for the comment. Thank you for listening. Say more. Before we close this out, do you want to respond at all to any of those comments, Marquita?
No, I haven't heard it framed quite that way, so I'd have to give it some thought.
Okay. All right, great. Well, let's do that. Invite people to the event coming up next week again.
September 5th, Friday night at the Depot, the 100th year celebration of the Urban League.
All right, great. Well, hang out with us because we're going to continue to talk about how we connect with each other in community. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. You just heard a wonderful conversation with Marquita Stephens. She's the president and CEO of the Urban League of Twin Cities, celebrating 100 years of service. I say that I had the fortune of being a board member in the past of the Urban League, and the fortune and opportunity to serve as the board chair of the Urban League of Minneapolis, as it was at that time. Let me bring in my additional guests, Justin Butler and TiAnna Anderson. And by way of introduction, first of all, let me introduce Justin. Justin and I are both board members of the Greater Twin Cities United Way. And Justin, let me bring your bio up here on my notepad just a second here. A little of it anyway. And it's not cooperating for me here. Here we go. Justin is the Chief Risk Officer at Belvedere Risk Management. And for over 20 years, he's been in financial services. He's cultivated a diverse foundation spanning audit, compliance, finance, operational risk, corporate strategy, and product management. It's a multidimensional experience that allows him to bring strategic insight and executional discipline to complex environments, strong focus on governance, innovation, and value creation. And he's an executive MBA graduate of Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management. He says he applies business first lens to risk management, bridging strategic leadership with the operational realities of today's regulatory and economic landscape. And Justin, the idea today is to talk about what philanthropy is and what it means to our community. Let me just welcome you to the program, Brother Justin, and take a second to talk about, explain to this audience what we should be thinking about when we think about philanthropy.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite today, Al, and it's going to be a great discussion. When I think about philanthropy, I think of it in the time, talent, and treasury, right? And so I think we all have something to give, and it doesn't really matter how much it is; it's what's meaningful to you, right? And so, the pocketbooks aren't all the same, and that's fine. But we all have skill sets, we all have passions, we all have deliverables that we can add into the community. And so I think the very first thing is to understand and have a pulse on the needs of the community, right? And so I think too often times people float in from somewhere else thinking that they can solve a problem that they don't necessarily understand. And so I think the very first thing is you have to understand what problem is you're trying to solve and how do you play a role in that. And sometimes that means cutting a check, right? There are things that I understand, but I don't have the skill set or the knowledge base to solve. But there are people who do, right? And so you and I serve on the United Way board. And so I know that those dollars are best spent with people who know how to fix those problems, right? And are on the ground day in and day out. Then there's sometimes where it is your talent. And so my background is financial services. I'm an accountant by education, a banker by trade. And so sometimes that is me rolling my sleeves up and going in to work with a board or serving on a board or a limited engagement where I can use those skill sets that I've developed from a corporate perspective to help an organization out to further their mission. And then sometimes it's time, right? My wife was the board chair of Catholic Charities. And once a month, every Tuesday, we go in and we either serve food or we prep the meals. And so there's an infrastructure that's built. There's teams there. They don't need, well, of course, all nonprofits need a check, right? Don't get me wrong on that. But there's the check piece of it. They don't need my talent right there. But what they need are the two hands to prepare and serve food. And so that's how I think about philanthropy and those T's there. So hopefully that gives a little bit of clarity to how I think about it.
That's wonderful. TiAnna, let me bring you in to broaden this conversation. And you have said that your life mission is to show other people how to live an abundant life, no matter what their circumstance might be, and how to be a mentor and to be mentored at the same time, all the time. You say that you're called to serve underrepresented minority women and youth, and your belief system shows up in your everyday life, your work, your volunteerism and activism. And, your background includes marketing, copywriting, ministry, and messaging. You are the children's ministry assistant at Sanctuary Covenant Church. You manage a 90-person volunteer team, and you work also as a freelance marketing strategist and copywriter at Anderson Innovative Marketing. You're the founder of Ready, Set, Aim Summit. Take a minute just to describe what that means. First of all, TiAnna, and thank you and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Al. I'm happy to be here. So I've worked at Sanctuary Covenant Church for coming up on my 2-year anniversary. I'm also still new-ish to the Twin Cities. And like Justin was saying, learning the landscape and being careful to not jump in and think that I have all of the answers, but be ready and willing to roll up my sleeves. That's how the person that I've always been. And I feel like that is what I bring to my role at Sanctuary Covenant, as well as to my freelance work as well.
And so how do you connect with the Black community around the issue of philanthropy? What does philanthropy mean for your work at Sanctuary? And take a minute to shout out Sanctuary. It's a major and important institution in our community. Tell us about Sanctuary and then how you, again, get people connected to the spirit, to the work of philanthropy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Sanctuary Covenant Church is a North Side church doing really good work in North Minneapolis. We also have a nonprofit arm where we serve at least 200 families every week, providing groceries, utility assistance, clothing, just a lot of things that people may be in need of. As far as what philanthropy means for me, it's
Before you do that, let me just sort of shout out you all. You all are sanctuaries at ground zero, ground zero of the heat in North Minneapolis, and going there. Number one was a bold and visionary activity, a selfless activity to establish a sanctuary in an area that was really beset by dysfunction and just to be frank, a lot of criminal activity that we were inflicting on each other. And so you all at Sanctuary showed up and have been there and been bringing a different voice, a different vibe, a different light. So how did that look to you? Why did TiAnna decide I'm gonna get in this fight at this place? How did you come to that decision? Because it'd be safe to go somewhere else, and do traditional church work. How did you decide to come to this place?
The thing that I love about Sanctuary is that we really focus on the social justice lens of the Bible. And I feel like that's a piece that a lot of Christians, especially evangelical Christians, tend to skip over. And we really try to get to the root of, we serve a social justice God who is invested in things that are going on in our community, whether it be crime, education, housing, poverty, all of those things that people are impacted by. We look at it through a social justice lens and kind of like a what would Jesus do? And so the work that we're doing there is, I believe, transformative. Like you said, we're on that corner of a Broadway and Aldrich where there was a lot of, just a lot of violence and
dangerous. Yeah.
Yes. And we've been active in the political space as well as with other nonprofits to kind of clean that corner up. And so it's definitely not as active as it has been in the past. The reason why I get impacted, because like I said, you have the social justice where your spirituality meets, and just understanding that these things aren't just happening, but there are systemic issues that are kind of spurring these things along. And so just really trying to attack the systemic things that are behind the things that we see outwardly.
So what advice do you give to Black-led organizations that are looking for funding, who want to build stronger relationships with in the philanthropy space with philanthropists? How does that happen?
Well, with my background being in marketing and messaging strategy, that's usually always the lens where I'm going to come from. If you have a dream, an idea, or a goal, you have to be able to communicate that, and you have to be able to communicate that to the proper stakeholders. And so just understanding your stakeholders and then what message they need to hear to get involved and get activated is very important. So making sure your message is clear, concise, and then giving them some actionable steps. What is it that you want them to do to get involved with your mission and what you're trying to bring about? So, yeah.
So, guys, I often ask my guests to tell their personal stories, because that sort of shows you why the passion exists. And let me start with you, Marquita. You and I both have a common experience living in Kansas City. That's where I was born. I don't know if you were born there or not, but I know you lived in Kansas City in my old neighborhood. Give me your background, Marquita, and I'm going to ask Justin and TiAnna to say the same thing. And the question I'm asking, as you describe, kind of how you've become the Marquita Stephens you are today, whose shoulders do you stand on? What's the legacy that you represent and that you are part of, that you're the link, and that through you, the future is created? Marquita, what do you think?
how much time you have. I guess I would say, in terms of trying to get to the question you really want to know, in terms of what shaped me,
Mhm.
I was raised on the cusp of the civil rights movement. Those were my identifying years. When you're on your high school years, et cetera, that's when in fact, there's research that says whatever was happening when you were 16 years old shapes your worldview. And so for me, around that time was a heavy civil rights emphasis in all over the country. So if we lived in a Black community, which most of us did, because things hadn't opened up yet. In the 60s, they were still pretty segregated, and which is when I grew, and so that shaped me. That set my perspective for everything that I
Where'd
did.
you grow up? Where are you from? Where's your birth?
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Go Steelers. So Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and went to undergrad school in Cleveland. I went to Case Western Reserve University, majored in urban studies with a minor in education. And then I did my master's of public administration at the University of Pittsburgh. Married and moved to Kansas City, and then we moved here in '99. But I think the thing that shaped me was one, that I'm a woman of faith. In fact, I remember when Sanctuary was first started with Emmett Smith. I remember they were friends of ours. I'm a pastor's wife, and so that's going to shape some of my worldview. And the activity of that era, the Black Panthers, Angela Davis, all of that shaped perspective back then. So it carries forward. It's not something you lose. It doesn't go away. It evolves, but it never goes away. And so my lens is going to be around justice. My lens is going to be around civil rights. My lens is going to be around equality for everybody that is in this sphere, leaving nobody behind. That's going to be my lens. And whether I'm doing activity for today or doing it for tomorrow, that is going to shape my lens. So I worked for United Way for 20 years. So I'm very familiar on both sides of the organization. I'm very familiar with the philanthropy side as well as the raising money side, and in two major markets. So it's always been a community-driven, perspective that was developed, that I honed over time. The experiences that I've had over time helped me because I was a victim of racial animus. And so I know firsthand what that feels like and what you need to get over. And I know firsthand
when you say you were a victim, what do you mean you were a victim?
I don't mean like nobody beat me up, but
okay.
I'll tell you, in banking, I started as a trainee, and within 5 years, I was a branch officer. I was ran the biggest network of branches that they had at the time.
In Pittsburgh? In Pittsburgh?
Yeah. And then the bank decided to use a psychological test for promotions. And it just so happened that I scored out of all of the people that were at my level, the managers, et cetera. I scored the highest in intelligence. So rather than use that as they had originally designed to base promotions on, they decided to change the rules. All of a sudden, that didn't really matter. So I mean, a victim in that way, and then you add on that, over time. So, it started then my first job, and then, it continues. And my story is no different than, everybody else. Everybody's got a story to tell around prejudice or being passed over or whatever. But there's blatant racism that we've all experienced, as if anybody's had a job, they've experienced that, and mine is no different. But it shapes you. Those experiences shape you, and it makes me work even.
Hopefully you all can hear me. Justin, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
you froze there for a second, Al.
Well, it happens. It
Yeah.
happens.
Justin, it's your turn.
It's my turn. Well, I didn't realize there was such a heavy Kansas City connection. I didn't grow up in Kansas City, but I grew up in Omaha, right down the road.
Okay.
And so, TiAnna, I know you're from Kansas City, and so it's funny.
So I'm having a little technical challenge here. I think my screen is frozen.
Well, I started thinking about Gates Barbecue, like all of a sudden, right? So I said, well, maybe I need to get in the car this weekend and drive on down and get me some barbecue. But a little bit different generation, Marquita, right? But
Right.
My grandparents grew up in Jim Crow. My parents grew up in the civil rights era, and so for me, it was more so watching my parents and grandparents do $5 worth of work just to get a dime, and making sure that I was the adding value to my community, right, and making sure that the work that they had to do in order to support me was amplified, right? So a prime example is my dad had a lawn and snow business, and so growing up West, right, in the 80s, it used to snow, like it was really, really snow. And so my dad would get up at 3:00 in the morning. He would go push snow so that everybody could get out their driveway, people get to work. But then he had a full-time job, and so he had to be to his job by 7:30. But it would still snow throughout the day. And then he would get off at 4:30 and then go back and push snow again, right? So he got up at 3, and sometimes he wasn't coming home until 10, 11 o'clock at night. And so my mom worked, my dad worked, my grandparents had a pest control business they ran for 40 years. But it wasn't so much so that I could eat, but it was so that I could eat better, right? And there's a difference between the two. And so you're doing a whole lot of work so that I could live in the right neighborhood, go to the right schools, and have an opportunity to not only survive, but to thrive. And so for me, I said, well, if you did all that for me, then I better take every advantage and opportunity that is put in front of me and optimize it. And so that's what I did, right? And so, and so that manifests itself with my secondary education, post-secondary education, with the careers that I've had, and with community, right? And so serving on the United Way board, I served on a Turning Point board, the National Association of Black Accountants. I was chair of the board for a community healthcare center. I'm on the board of Hamlin University. And so for me, it's taking what it is I've learned, taking the things that I've gained from a career, from education, and letting that manifest itself in other ways. And so, for me, I think, Marquita, the overt racism hasn't necessarily manifested itself, but at 38 years old, I was the CRO for a $17 billion bank. Right? People thought I got there unjustifiably so, right, through a DEI program. What's wrong, no matter what anybody says, with the DEI program, because of all the things that you talked about. But in reality, I was qualified. I was overqualified. I was a risk leader at $2 trillion bank, right? And then I dropped down to a $17 billion bank. And so, there's always something that's out there, right? And so I got my accounting degree. I got my years of experience. I got an MBA from a top 5 business school program, right? So I wasn't put here. I earned where I am, right? You all earn where you are, and all the master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, right? You have Black women in America are the most educated population that there are. So if we're going to talk about going to a merit-based system, right, then let's go to a merit-based system, right? So I won't even get into all of that, right? But if you want to be merit-based, then you wouldn't have certain people running the Department of Education. You wouldn't have people running the Department of Defense, right? You wouldn't have so many people in their seats. So if you want to talk about merit, then let's talk about merit. But maybe that's another episode, Al. So I'll maybe go on over to the other.
Listen, thank you. My internet is spotty, so I've been bounced out a couple of times. But that's what I love about having wonderful guests, because you keep it going. And I know that whether I am on or not, the conversation is going to proceed. So thank you, Justin, TiAnna, and Marquita. Justin, I maybe you talked about it, but I'll ask you again because I might have been out. Your lineage. I know you mentioned your dad. How far back do you go? Where do you come from? Do you have a sense of great grands? Do you have a sense of origin for the family?
Oh yeah.
What's your creation story?
Arkansas, Mississippi,
Uh-huh.
and not Little Rock and not Jackson, right? We're talking Monticello, Arkansas. We're talking Aberdeen, Mississippi, right? And so, and my family kind of migrated up through following the railroads and following the packing houses. And so from Mississippi to St. Louis to Kansas City to Omaha, where I was born and raised, up here in the Twin Cities, matter of fact. And so my great aunt, we actually just lost her yesterday, lived in St. Paul on Lexington and Laurel since 65, right, in the same house, right? And so, so a good migration, but large families that ended up getting smaller as time kind of went by. I'm an only child, right? My grandmother was one of 9. And so, but that's where we came from. And so tight-knit families that worked, right? Earned everything that they had, crawled for every inch, walked and ultimately wanted to see us run. And so I felt it incumbent upon myself and my cousins to make do with that. And I have a cousin that's out in LA that's running a finance for a movie theater studio. I have a cousin down in Houston that's a tax attorney. I have architectural engineers that graduated from Princeton. And so, all of my greats, right, had a whole lot of work to do growing up in the Jim Crow South. But now you look forward and you say, when you talk about being your ancestors' wildest dreams, I'm hoping that we are fulfilling that for them.
Let's shout out to your aunt. So sorry to hear that she has transitioned to become an ancestor, but take a minute to acknowledge her and what she represented to our community and to you and the family.
Yeah.
What's her name? Say her name.
Yeah, my Barbara Smith. My grandmother's brother, right underneath her, it's his widow. And so my Uncle James passed away in 2008, but he did a lot of work there at the NDC. So Mike Tamale and NDC. I actually walked into the NDC some years later, didn't know that Mike and my uncle knew each other, and I see a picture of my uncle just hanging up in NDC. And so it's his wife, and so they, raised 3 children, grandchildren, all sitting there in St. Paul. A force to be reckoned with. They're at St. Paul High, and at the children all went to Highland as well. A fierce spades player, right? And will let you know it, right? If you renege, she's gonna let you know. Doesn't matter if you're 12 or you've been playing the game for 60 years. And she will be missed, definitely. So, a little bit of a change for us in the family right now, but we've been left stronger because she was here.
I know that you are a doting dad, because every time I see you, something just happened. It's going to be happening with the kids, right? And so it just tells me who you are, a person who has a sense of duty, obligation, and pride, both in what you have done, but also what you see for your children. So what is the vision? What vision does Justin bring? What world do you see yourself co-authoring for your children and the generations beyond them? What is it?
Al, I mean, you're right. The United Way awarded my wife and I the Civic Engagement Award last year at the Tocqueville Society dinner. And it's really for adults, right? And Tocqueville donors and whatnot. But we brought our children because the things that we do in this household, my wife and I both excel at our academics, we excel at our careers, but we also want to make sure that we are a force for good in the community as well. And our children need to know what that means. They need to recognize and they need to be a part of that, right? And so there's kind of a 3-pronged approach there between education, career, and community. And so that's really what it is we're trying to do. And it's not just about, to my earlier point, cutting checks, but my children have gone to serve food with other children, right? They do the food prep, they do the servicing, right? And so they have to understand that while you have some of the benefits of having corporate executive parents of coming into nice offices and getting suites at a football game, you also need to know that to whom much is given, much is expected, and you have to return that, right? Because all that we have can be gone tomorrow. And so, a lot of folks who are maybe struggling or down on their luck, they're just one step away from either being a lot worse off or a lot better off. And if
Mhm.
we can do just a little bit, everybody can do just a little bit, do their part to make life better for the next person, then let's do so. And so I think that's it, right? It's excellence in what it is that they do. There are a lot. I stand on my parents and grandparents' shoulders, and so do they. And so you have to make sure that the work that people put in for you is worthwhile, right? Don't take any of this for granted. And so that's really what we try to instill in them, a sense of community, the sense of education, a sense of overall excellence.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. What a wonderful conversation, Justin. Thank you for that. TiAnna Anderson, you're kind of the four of us here, the young one. And so all of this flows in your direction.
No,
And
hold on. I think I'm younger than TiAnna.
well, I don't know. I'm just
He
looking.
got me
I'm
by
looking.
I'm looking. Now I know you, Justin.
That's just gray hair, Al. That's all that
Yeah.
is.
But TiAnna, you said you've been there a couple of years. What's your family story? Whose shoulders do you stand on? And with an eye towards, and you've shared it already, but say it again, the mission that you have personally for creating a future that enables our people to see ourselves as victors, not as victims. What do you think?
I definitely stand on my mother's shoulders as well as my grandmother's shoulders. I am a Kansas City native. My grandmother, she didn't have a formal title. She was a cleaner. She was a home cleaner in white people's homes most of her life.
What part of Kansas City did you grow up in?
I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, right off of 46th and Tracy.
Okay, I grew up on 28th and Brooklyn in Kansas City.
Okay.
28th and Brooklyn, and then 47th and Lawn was the neighbor, Elmwood Lawn, that neighborhood. And I went to Westport High School. And so that's my old neighborhood.
Okay.
And then we were at 30th and Benton for most of the
Okay.
time we were there. Yeah.
Yes. So my grandmother never met a stranger, didn't have a lot of money, obviously, but if there was anybody in need, as you all know, in Kansas City, especially back in the 50s to 70s, and maybe even after that, everybody was kind of segregated in the same area. Everybody knew everybody. They always talk about, oh, the Smiths, the Johnsons. That's how they referred to everybody back then in the Black community. But if there was anybody who especially needed food, they knew they could come to my grandmother's house and get a plate of food. And so that mentality just kind of trickled on down to me. I saw how she worked. I saw how my aunties worked and provided for their families and other people that lived around us. Also was blessed to see the first Black congressperson get elected into Congress with Reverend Emmanuel Cleaver, which was, I was about in the 5th grade when that happened, but still understanding the gravity of that. He literally spoke at my 5th grade graduation and kissed my hand. So just seeing my mom walk to the polls every single time there was a vote about anything, and me being a kid seeing this, but not fully understanding, but understanding the gravity of it and the importance of it is definitely shaped me to this day and something that I impart into my children.
I want to end with each of you sort of making a statement that dispels the myth about whether or not Black people give. Because I know the truth is, and you've just said it so many ways, TiAnna, giving is in our nature. It's what we do, and we don't make a distinction. We just do it. But Marquita, Justin, TiAnna, a final statement here on the propensity of our people to serve our people and humanity through generosity. Marquita?
Yeah, I'd say we have a history of generosity. It doesn't always show up in the way mainstream America likes to see it, or in the way mainstream America counts it. But as a people, we are a giving people, and that stems back from the motherland.
Justin, you got 30 seconds. Give me a.
Same way. We don't have our name on buildings. We don't have our names on fields and all of those sorts of stuff, but we cut checks. Let's be real about it. We cut checks. We do so quietly as just the way that the Black community operates.
TiAnna, your final thoughts?
We recognize we all share the same plight, and it's up to us to help us. We're our own safety net.
Listen, what a wonderful conversation. TiAnna Anderson, Justin Butler, Marquita Stephens, what a great conversation. Thank all of you for being who you are and for doing what you do. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. We'll see you next week. Take care.